everyone, welcome back to the STEERus Weekly Grind virtual coffee chat. And every week we've got, well, a really interesting guest and we look at different angles. This week's guest is Theresa Etheredge, and she is a long-standing expert in the field of HR and specifically in and around succession planning. She's got some interesting software that I've never seen anybody else developing. And believe me, as someone who's in the HR tech space, I am hunting around. And so let me introduce Theresa. She's the co-founder here of Interaction. And I want you to emphasize that there's a big capital HR in the middle of their name and what that stands for, because it doesn't stand for human resources. Hey, Theresa.
Hi, how are you? I'm very excited to be here. And you're right, at Interaction, when we were thinking about, our company and our product and what we wanted it to be, we knew in the center it was about humans, it was about people. And so our HR stands for human relationships. And that's where we started. We spent an entire year saying, what are all the processes around people in organizations and when they are interacting, how they're interacting, and how do we get some data around that? And so the HR for us is about human relationships.
And that's why we're so aligned, because soft skills, it's all about how do you build relationships with people, right? The communication, the professionalism. So we're so excited to have you on the chat today. So you, of all companies in that we've spoken to, are really dialed into that end user, that employee experience and what's happening. And one of the things I loved about Interaction is that you guys are on a mission, well, a not so secret mission, to kill the performance review. And I love that. Talk to us a little bit about what you're doing.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're super excited because it's the annual performance review. It's traditional processes around people that it's time for them to go, right? Like when I hear people talk about this great resignation and all the terms that are being used, the reinvention, all the problems that we had, they've always been there. Right. So giving the visibility to it, I'm so excited that we're talking about it because it's so critical that we, and like you and I have talked about, we personalize work. We personalize the experience that someone has in growth and development. And that annual performance review is pointless. There is nothing good that's going to come from me telling you how I think you did over the course of the last year, right? I tell people all the time, if you think about a teacher, the value of having a teacher is someone along the path is helping you, right? Giving you feedback, encouraging you, setting goals for you. Same with a coach, whether that's in sports or in music. My partner, JD Grogan, loves to say, you don't show up at the Olympics and perform and then go back and try to get someone to give you some feedback on how you did, leading up to it. You're there. So along the way, that's what we should be doing in organization. So what we hope to do is we want to give you real-time feedback, like access to your personal performance, presence, and recognition data. So you as the employee can be responsible for your own career. Like it's a partnership, right?
Absolutely. And I was thinking about you this morning, not only because we were on deck for today's event, but I was brought into a video recording of someone else's performance review because I work through this third-party organization and that employee of theirs does work for us. And I was cringing because you just know, I just knew that the feedback was not going to be positive. And here's this poor other person on the receiving end and all the things leading up for the last few months. And then it's just, the system's outdated. And so flipping that around, what do you think it is that employees are really struggling with right now? You talked about, you mentioned great resignation, it's the reshuffling, it's the redefinition, it's all of this stuff. But the problems have been there for a long time. What do you think the big issues are, Theresa?
I think it's purpose. I think people are starting to think about what is my purpose, both personally and professionally. And one of the things that unfortunately, even the best companies in the world do at a lesser degree, like what they're struggling with is, what is a career plan for someone? What is the purpose? We know what our vision might be and what some of the strategies are, but we're not aligning those with the people strategies in an organization. So when you come to work every day, every person wants to feel valued. They want to be included, but they want to know that they're doing meaningful work. And if you don't have feedback processes in place that are real time and inclusive, right? Not just from the boss, but from everyone you're interacting with, then sometimes you start to lose that connection. You lose the feeling of adding value. And then all of a sudden it becomes less and less valuable for you to be there. So people, again, I think it goes back to what is your purpose as an individual? What are the core values that you have, and do they align with an organization, and how you're connecting those together?
Simon Sinek, start with why, right?
Start
I
with
mean, he
why.
nailed it in 3 words.
And that personalization, we don't take the time to get to know people. And, in the past, it didn't matter as much, because if things didn't work out, we'd just replace you, right? I've heard it, we'll find somebody else for the job. Right now, you can't find anybody else. And so you're starting to, like we've talked about, you go back internally. Why do people come to this job every day? People don't show up to do a bad job. People don't show up, right, to say, I'm going to mess up whatever I can today. People come in to do a good job. But when you're unsure of how your job connects to the greater enterprise, that's a challenge for people. And again, not everybody's great at sending that message down or helping people grow and develop. So I try to tell the employees, take some responsibility for you, your own accountability, but you can only do that if you have data. I have to give you something to work with, right? And connect what the vision is of the organization with your skills and abilities. So I'm hoping we're doing this with our product, with the real-time data that's inclusive, to really change that old traditional process that wasn't valuable.
No, and I think one of the interesting things that Interaction is doing as a disruptor in the field of HR tech is really driving alignment and coordination around assuming positive intent. That, like you said, so the worker is showing up not to do a crummy job and to tank the organization. And the manager is going in and assuming, coming in with assuming positive intent, that the workers on the team want to be able to work together more effectively. But if people aren't aligned and figure out where that is, that gap is too large, that it's just, especially in this remote world, it's too easy to go, I'm going to ignore it. I'm going to pretend it's a non-factor, and I'm going to go back to my little world and living in my home office and doing what I do and just ignoring.
Right. Yeah, you can't do that. And we're all so different, right? And I think that's another big piece of personalization is, I love assessments. I'm a fan of assessments for the fact that it gives you some data, right, to understand how someone thinks, learns, behaves. And if we can start to get to that level of trust, that's going to build a culture that people want to work in. That's going to make people want to stay, because not only are you investing in me, you want to know who I am. And again, this isn't a best friend thing, right, where it's like we have to spend a bunch of time together. I just want to know what motivates you. Like, what aspirations do you have? Let's look at the growth plans that we can put in place for you that align with our company as well. When you can get that and you do it in a way that you said is for good intent, right? I'm going to give you feedback because I want you to be able to be your best self. And even if the feedback I'm giving you isn't what your reality is, it's my reality. And so that's going to be how I treat you, how I engage with you, how I include you. So if we can get people to start opening up, sharing information, again, all in real time, so that we have the opportunity to talk about it and work through it, you build relationships, you build trust, you get transparency. And then again, that's the culture that people want to stay in.
And you raised a really good point about that gap, in awareness, where people perceive that they are being perceived as X, but then when you talk to the person on the receiving end, they say, you're actually an X minus Y. And we've got some data on that. We've been collecting hundreds and hundreds of soft skills assessments, and we're seeing that the students or the learners rate themselves as this, as an X, but when reality, the other people are putting them here at an X minus Y. And so it's really interesting. They don't have that level of awareness to know that, ooh, and that's what you bring, I think, to the table that's so important, in a gentle, assumes positive intent kind of way. You're not out to kill someone and trash them.
Yeah. And I think that's another thing. When people hear the word feedback, they freak out because, again, we're not self-aware as humans. And that's a skill, right? It takes a lot of work and effort into that. And then on top of that, I don't really have that much of a relationship with you. So when you tell me you're going to give me some feedback, immediately, right, the amygdala gets hijacked and I'm like, no, thanks. But if you can start to build those relationships that, again, I don't want to give you feedback about you as a human. I want to give you feedback about the observable behaviors that I see. So we built the product around that. So if empathy is an objective for you and the system sends me something that says, hey, you've spent 25 interactions with you. One of your objectives is empathy. Here's what it means to our company. And these are the behaviors that Loralyn should be exhibiting. Do you see her exhibiting these behaviors? Then it's less personal. It's not like, I don't think you're empathetic as a person. but maybe I don't see you at the end of every meeting doing certain things that we define as empathy. So that's what we're hoping to do, is focus on behaviors, not the individual, and give them that feedback in real time in certain areas that actually build to a working plan for themselves. So I can say, hey, even if this isn't the intent I'm putting out there, it's what's being perceived. So I have an opportunity to engage or not. Or this is exactly what I want to do it more, and I'm doing so well at it that we can actually partner me with other people in the organization from a skill building perspective to share and mentor. So what we found that I'm so excited about is data. Like even the data you didn't expect that you were going to get, you start to get. So diversity, equity, and inclusion shows up when people are providing data on each other. Meeting data, like how people are engaging in those meetings. You know, there's something to be said about, why are we having so many meetings? Like we were kind of really surprised at the spider legs that happened from the type of data that was coming in. And then the best thing that I'm most passionate about is the whole talent mobility and succession planning, because as much as the great companies I've worked for put a lot of effort into building talent pools, but when you don't have the data all throughout the organization, you tend to focus at the highest levels. And sometimes those aren't the most critical positions. So the tool enables you, again, super easy and quick to get access to data that's about all people in your organization and start to use that data to make better business decisions.
And that's what I like about it, that it's that objectivity, which really has been missing through so many of the performance reviews and structures. Now, of course, 360 assessments, I'm also a big fan of these types of things. They can be helpful because, again, that's outside or external, that's peer perception rather than, or even maybe managerial perception versus your own, which is the difference. And then having all of that information is going to be so critical now as we're probably coming out of this great resignation reshuffling era where people are saying, yeah, you want to boomerang and come back into the organization? Not so fast. You left and yeah, we're kind of sorry you did, but at the same time, sorry, not sorry. And we're taking a little closer look at everybody else who's in the organization and stuck it out with us and finding what they can do better and where they have maybe some talent gaps that if we gave them some professional development, we can upskill them and they can rise into the role versus us going outside and bringing someone back or any of that stuff. So I think this is going to be key coming up in the next few months.
I love it. And it is kind of the data in the middle, right? So before you did, if you did the 360, you kind of did them, you know, they were long and lengthy. And so for us trying to get those little micro bits that are easy and quick, and from everybody that you're interacting with, is giving you so much actual real-time data to work with. And that's why I love your stuff, because it aligns with the, you know, our philosophy of make it easy, make it simple, make it valuable for people to grow and develop. And so when we give you some of that data that's collected internally, and it's the data that already lives in your organization anyway, but then you can take that and you can transition that to real career growth and development partnerships with companies like STEERus. My heart is just full for that. So
it's right. It's a personalized learning experience, right? So you can create and say, oh, here's some gaps. Here's some places you can work on. Let's go. Here's your customized curriculum. But enough of that sort of stuff. So what I'm curious about is when you look around corporate cultures and everywhere that's there, we talked about that. Soft skills are really at the heart of all of this. And as you said, HR, human relationships. Which skill do you think, soft skill, is particularly lacking right now?
I always go to empathy. So any of the emotional intelligence skills to me stand out, resilience, you know, self-awareness. And I believe that is because a lot of us have not taken the time to step back. There's such a focus on me, right? Me. I have to be successful. I have to do these things. But the most successful people I found are the most empathetic, right? They're able to put themselves in the place of another person, right? They're able to understand and empathize with someone. And I think if business leaders truly focus on empathy, if they just put their whole heart into understanding, that impacts their whole company, every single person that works there. Again, to me, that drives engagement. When you know that someone cares enough about you to be able to empathize with you, that's going to change cultures. And again, goes back to that's where people want to work. So for me, that's always been my go-to. It's one of the ones I do believe that it's hard. It's not easy to do that because it's not sympathy, right? It's very, very different. So I can still want to hold you accountable and help you along your path, but I can empathize with where you're at and let's be in a partnership. So it forms a bond, it forms trust that I think will help organizations be successful in the future. Because if we look at these future workers, and you and I, again, have talked about this, they want a different experience, right? They want to be accountable and they want feedback and they want to be successful, but they want to do it in a place that they feel like they belong. And that comes with leadership that really cares about people.
And a place not only that they feel like they belong, but a place that they feel like they are respected and valued for what they do bring to the table. That's a theme that we keep hearing constantly. Doesn't matter if they're 14 or 15 years of age, they're still saying that. Do I matter? I don't want to just do the scut work. Does it matter?
I've talked to a lot we've done a lot of focus groups, and you get that same thing going, like, okay, so why would you leave an organization? And that's what they say. Like, I want the experience now. I want to live. And I want to be able to bring what I do in my personal life to my professional life. So I've met some interesting companies that are doing some pretty cool things that are trying to help encourage that. I met one individual, it's like very focused on who are you outside of work? Because when you go up and you meet someone, you don't say to someone, hey, are you an accountant? You're like, hey, what do you like to do? Like, you know what I mean? The conversation flows personally that way. So there is going to be that ability for people in the future to say, let's build cultures around what the people want, not just what we need to do to sell a product or, right? It's about the people. And when I treat you well, when I make you feel like you're part of this vision and this purpose of our company, I don't even have to focus on my customers, because guess what? You will. You're going to put that extra effort, so we spend a lot of time customer focused. The customer's always right. And you know what? They're not always right. But we can manage it in a way and making sure that our people feel so valued and so in love with the product or the service that we provide that they're going to win that customer over every single time because of that. So that's our hope, help them build the cultures that can be, and for the people and make a big difference.
And you just highlighted something that's been on my mind for a while, but you're the first person that's really articulated it. In 2000, the year 2000, turn of the last century, things shifted. Consumers became the ones that were in control, no longer the vendors. Consumers could do their rating, do their magic, speak, on social media, public forums, chat forums, and they would decide the trajectory of success. What's happened now is that employees have not only taken control with the Great Resignation and the Great Reshuffling, but now it's the employees who are in charge of dictating the corporate culture that they want to exist in, versus the company saying, this is how it shall be, so it shall be written, so it shall be done, this is our culture. And it's a really interesting inversion, and you nailed it. It's been there. Hey, nice.
It's been there. And people say, hey, the culture was on the wall, but it wasn't in the hall, right? And that's true.
Yes,
the culture is really what people live and believe they live in every day. And what people want is a voice. And that's kind of, again, when we started out, it was like, what can we work on? People want to have a voice. So many times you go in and you get rated or you get feedback from a manager and you're like, you're not with me all the time. Like, you didn't know I was up all weekend, working on that platform. Like, but the people that I work with do. And so they wanted that voice, but they wanted to have a voice that mattered, not just, because sometimes you raise your voice and that wasn't such a great thing. And so I do see that. I see people saying, you know what? And they did it. They did it with saying, I just will leave. Like, I'd rather not have a job than be somewhere where I don't feel valued or appreciated or whatever. So it's really starting to flip it. And I read something the other day that I found interesting was, as much effort as companies are putting into saying that they're doing something, they may be doing some training around diversity, equity, inclusion. They do some things. They're not really pushing forward to make change happen. So talking about it isn't enough. And I think that's where the employees are saying it's not enough anymore. So we talk about reviews. Yeah, customers have always been able to give a review, right? And we took that so seriously. We would go back, we would performance manage the person, like, right? And we collected that data. I'm like, we are so willing and we want the voice of the customer, but we've never really wanted the voice of the employee. And when I tell people, engagement surveys are beautiful. I love when companies do them, but if you do them once or twice a year, that doesn't show that you care. that shows that you're looking to say, I did the right thing and we got some data and we're going to go do some research on it. But if you really care, you get that feedback all the time. Like that's part of your culture of people being able to be recognized for the culture, people being able to give feedback on the culture. So again, I love that employees have the ability to do it. They need the technology to be able to, exercise that voice. So that's what we hope we can share.
I think so, because it drives the accountability. That's part of it too. You can do the survey. I've been part of these big Fortune 100 companies. Oh, big survey, multi-million-dollar rollout, blah, 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 blah. A year later, oh, these are some of the findings we observed. Really? Like, okay, whatevs, right?
Yeah. I'm with you. And then
Next.
they're so watered down because when you do such a big group, you kind of always end up average. And if you try to have impact one side or the other, one side's upset and the other one, like you're never moving forward. And that's where that personalization comes back in. Like we put something in our platform that's all about, experience surveys where people can say, hey, what about 30, 60, 90 days after you got a new manager? What's your experience? What if you're 30, 60, 90 days out and you were the new manager? Like, what is your life like, right? So trying to give people opportunities when we know that there's either stressful things happening in their world, there's very positive things happening in their world. The whole stay interview was such a push a long time ago and we kind of went away from it, but figure out why people are happy, what's engaging them, what's driving them, let them tell you, right? And then build their path in your company around that. When we talk about money spent, the ROI for us, and there's people saying it now, which I love, it's the return on individuals. That's ROI. That's the impact. So people leaving your organization cost you money. People that are disengaged cost you money. People that have drama in the workplace cost you money. Like all those things money is just blowing out the door. What if you made an environment that people love to work in and then that money was shared back in the organization? Like you used it in a way so differently. And we tell people too, even our compensation practices that we have today are traditional. You get this performance review that equates to some kind of merit increase. And then you stay a long time and you make a whole bunch more than somebody else. And right. It should be about the work. You should be able to pay people fairly for the job. If you make $100,000 a year because you're a supervisor over accounting, every supervisor over accounting in our company, no matter where they live, should make $100,000. Then I will reward you for your performance because I have real-time data always about your performance. So I can decide as an organization how I want to reward you for performance. And then I can incentivize you for whatever I want. So if I value tenure in my company, I'm going to give you a pension plan. If I need to incentivize somebody to move to Canada or New York City, right? I'm going to give you another $20,000, to move from Atlanta to New York because that's a cost of living. I can make choices and decisions, but in fairness, whatever the work you do is, I'm going to pay you the same. People want that. I want to know that, right? The work that I'm doing is compensated fairly and I'm going to be recognized and rewarded for the work that I'm doing. And I can choose a company that incentivizes me for things that are important to me.
Amen.
I get so excited about this because I want people to be happy. I want them to, one person a couple weeks back said something and it touched me deeply in my heart. He said, we've made it okay for people to go to work every day and not be happy. We've normalized that. And when do we say, hey, that's not normal? People shouldn't get up and go to a job. I love my job. I've always loved my job. And that's something that should be, and everyone should have that opportunity. So when we normalize it, that's something's wrong and we got to fix it.
Well, we can get on that and fix it. But, and I know you and I could talk forever, but we're going to wrap up with one last question. I'm going to ask you to fill in the blank, Theresa. The world needs more
kindness.
Amen to that. I agree. So with that, thank you so much, Theresa Etheredge, co-founder of Interaction, just changing the game and disrupting how we do everything from performance feedback in real time to driving accountability and, treating people like humans.
I love it. Thank you so much. It was such a pleasure. And I'm such a big fan of all the work you're doing. So I can't wait to see where this goes.
Thank you, Theresa.
Bye.